that Silicon Valley is a stressful place to call home? Because you live it every day in your calendar, in your commute, in your housing payment. How do you have any damn fun when all you do is work? Yeah, you come home from the office, but do you really stop working? What is the price you are paying for this Silicon Valley lifestyle? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to SiliCAN, your antidote to the Silicon Valley grind. I'm Shana McLean-Moore, a life coach at Anchor Psychology here in San Jose. I'm here inspired by a quote from a business book that I love, which is, if you want to change your culture, you have to change your conversations. So I'm here to start those conversations because I think Silicon Valley is leaving people stressed out. They're all in for work, which is pretty much leaving everybody all out of their relationships, their physical well-being, and any semblance of a pursuit of joy. So I'm here to talk with people who feel the pressure of the grind, but also have a mindset of how I can thrive through all of it. So today I'm interviewing Zackary Bull, a young man I have known for about 8 years, someone who has just like a great twinkle in his eye and a sense of hustle that I really admire. And I think he's a great person to talk to get the young person's perspective of what it's like to grow up here. So welcome, Zach.
Thanks for having me.
Super glad to have you. So I know what it was like for me growing up in Silicon Valley. In fact, I actually went to Homestead High School, the very same high school that Steve Jobs went to. And so I think I was always aware of like, wow, you could make something in your garage that could turn out to make you one of the most powerful and wealthy people in the world. And it's inspiring, but it's also a bit daunting. So I'm wondering, a whole generation later, like, what is it like for you to grow up around here, and what were the pain points and what were the wins?
Yeah, I think that for me, like in high school, we were kind of going through that whole age of like, Instagram's just really starting to get popular. Everyone had Facebook for a while after that period of time. And there's kind of that wave of like, everyone's starting apps, everyone's creating all these new things. And there was such like a pressure to be like, perform, like, whether you're dropping out of high school or deciding not to go to college, it's like, look at all these other people doing these great things. Like, why aren't you doing something? And
Right.
So that pushed me to like my junior year. I like went to all my friends, and because I was just feeling like a lack of like work and grind. And so I was just kind of like, oh, like, let's start like a clothing business.
And so you started that as a high school student?
Yeah, when I was 16 or 17 years old. Yeah, and it was like really bad. And like, just we had no idea what we were doing, but it was like one of those things where it's like, okay, I have a company, like I'm good, like I'm doing something, like as if like being like 16 or 17-year-old, that was like an important thing.
Yeah,
to
get
do.
to work, son.
Yeah, like
right.
Start your company already, type of thing. Yeah,
right. I know. I think that's one of the hardest things about growing up here is, on the one side, you see people become these what feels like overnight successes, becoming wealthy and powerful, and you think, if I just had that one idea, right? And so you think like you've got to get going on that one idea, and then if you don't have that idea, like what's wrong with me, kind of thing. So how long did you work on this business?
I did it for about a year, and I kind of went through that interesting, like, now that I have a business, there's a pressure to perform. And so there was an interesting, like, the friends that I started the business with, we had disagreements and different views on how things should be done. And so it was like, now I'm having partnership problems.
Right.
Which is like a very adult problem.
Right.
And so people started to get weeded out of the business.
Right.
And then that just slowly turned into a stress of, now that I have a business, I need to perform. And I need to show people that it's progressing. I need to show people that I'm successful and have sales. And so that's when, for me, this like anxiety and this stress took into play, and to put into effect also that like, it's my junior year of high school. One of the most crucial times of high school. You're grinding for as high of a GPA as you can get to get into a good college. And I'm just adding this stress of like a business onto my plate while also doing sports and trying to have a social life and all these other things. So
you're making me remember that when back in my day when I applied for college, you weren't expected to have these like legendary stories to talk about in an essay as well. And even though that was part of the pressure, but it was also kind of a selling point for you, I imagine, in the application process.
Well, exactly, and I had multiple people call me from different schools and offer me scholarships and just different things, just because they're like, "Oh wow, this is incredible! You're from the Silicon Valley and you're taking all of these things around you and applying it to yourself, and you started a business, and like good on you." And
Right.
in the background of all that, my parents were like concerned about like you're coming home and you're napping for like 3 hours after school and then getting up and doing homework and working on your business all night long, and you're not getting enough sleep, you're not like getting the right nutrients, the right food and stuff like that. And so
Right.
it's just like there's all these other things, and then from like the outside, everyone looking in, it's like, oh, like how impressive, you're so young and starting a business. But
Right.
it's just
One of the things that's freaking me out the most as you're saying this is I have a few friends with kids your age and some are like 25 and they're working in tech now. They're done with their schooling and they're telling me that their children already have high blood pressure
wow.
at the age of 25. And I can't, I'm sure there were people that had it at 25 when I was growing up too, but all I can think of is, oh my gosh, like having heart issues is something my age group is now experiencing.
Yeah.
And to think that that could be starting in a 25-year-old and like, what does your heart look like at age 50 if you're already having those health issues at age 25? And as a life coach and a mama, that stuff really kind of freaks me out. So that's
Yeah.
part of the conversation I like to have with clients is how I understand the need to like perform and grind and make your mark. Like it's an admirable trait. Like I know when I leave town to go on vacation to somewhere quiet and then I come back here, I just feel this bit of a sizzle. And I think like this is the place where things get done. It's exciting to be a part of. But then I'm also, the older I get, I'm watching all the people that seem to be really beaten down by this because
Mhm.
not everyone is that success story, but so many are going from one startup venture to another to another. And so it's that round the clock work ethic, not like it's not in a sustainable way. Like you
Mhm.
can do that for a short while, but if every gig you take is another like all hours thing. Like, what is
Yeah.
that doing to your health? What is that doing to your relationships? What is that doing to your spirit? And so I'd love to talk with you a little bit about how you navigate all of that. So, well, fast forward, you went to University of Arizona,
Mhm.
and did your business continue then?
So my initial business that I started in high school ended because I had contractual agreements with the other people that I started with that I can no longer fulfill.
And that's because
So
you all went to different schools,
we
or
and just I knew that it was kind of one of those things where it's like um, it wasn't going where I wanted it to go, and it wasn't really the right fit for me anymore. I'd
Mhm.
like grown past it, and so I was kind of in this like headspace of like, well, go to school. I'm going to study psychology, and maybe I'll just have this clothing thing kind of on the back burner. And I got to University of Arizona, and a guy that I went to high school with, Jesse Dewick, who I know you know,
Mhm.
went to U of A for a year. And when me and Jesse got there, we kind of had these like fan, I like to say like these like dream stories that we would talk about, which is like, let's drop out and like start something.
Right,
And so it was kind of like I was back to that like you don't need school, you just need an idea, which
right.
if you're super smart and you know where to go and you have the resources to do it, fine. But I don't think that it's a romantic idea, but I
Mhm.
don't think it's the best fit for everybody. So for a year, my first year at college, even though I told myself I was going to take a break, I was right back into creating another clothing brand. And I workshopped the name, the logo, the idea, how everything was going to run for a year because I saw all the problems that had happened beforehand. I wanted to re-workshop those
Mhm.
and figure out, okay, what is it that I'm doing wrong?
Right.
And so long story short, I created a brand called Remember the Future, as you know,
Yeah, I love
and it like way surpassed my expectations of what it could be. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like I wanted to prove to myself, like, could I do this?
it. Right.
And I did it, but on the back end, again, going back to the whole behind the scenes thing, I'm a full time student at U of A. I'm working a part time job. And then when I come home at night, I'm doing graphic design and web design and marketing for my company.
I don't see any sleep in that.
So, yeah, it's like, basically 60-hour work weeks where the only thing I was actually really getting paid for was my part time job at school.
Right.
So it was basically like working for free, just
Right.
working to try to make it. And every sale and dime that I made was going right back into the business. And it was just
the hustle.
Yeah.
So I know that it then led you to your next step now that you've graduated. What tell everybody what that's about.
So I applied to FIDM, which is the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and I applied there, and I did not think I'd get in. I was just kind of like, this is something I love. It's something I'm really interested in doing, and this is what I want to do with my life. But I have my BA in psychology now, so it's kind of like, if this doesn't work out, at least I have psychology. It's another thing I'm pretty interested in. Right. And then because of the work that I'd done in high school and in college with these two separate brands, they were so impressed of my overall knowledge of the business and how much I had taught myself about not just like clothing and sourcing and graphic design, but also like marketing and finances and web design and all these things. And so they offered me like a $10,000 scholarship to go to their school.
Awesome.
So that's my like next chapter.
And are you comfortable sharing what's the big dream now? I know you have one.
Yeah, I think the big dream for me is I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without giving away too much. I think there's a massive void in men's fashion and the struggle between quality and affordability. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
I'm trying to fill the gap in that space for men, because I think that men have a very limited selection of clothing, and it's been the same thing since basically clothing has been around. I mean, as long as the t-shirt's been around, it's really been the same cycle of clothing. There's not really been anything like new or exciting that's come out. And so I want to make new and exciting alternative clothing for men without it being too feminine. Because I think that many designers who have tried to go after this space have gone with like the immediate, like, let's make a dress for men, or like the male romper. Like everyone, that was like a whole fad. Like,
so I can't see many of the men I know wearing that, but I'm sure somebody likes
stuff like that. And so it's like, rather than trying to like re-engineer these like, inherently female pieces of clothing and just going, let's just make it for men, I'm trying to create like new, exciting pieces that are actually new and different that men would want to wear.
Right. And what do you I imagine with the kind of the scrappiness you've had and making these other businesses work, what do you think is going to be the challenge in doing that? Like what does the new grind look like for you to make this happen?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is a struggle for me right now is I'm having that classic issue that everyone has, which is I'm fresh out of college and no one will hire me to do anything because I don't have enough work experience.
Right.
And because no one will hire me, I can't get the work experience to do the jobs that I want to do. Right. So it's like this like constant cycle that I think like a lot of anyone who's between the age of like 20 to 25 right now could probably relate to me about.
And by the way, my parents are tired of helping me pay for stuff, so I need some money too.
Yeah, and I think that they're like, for me, it's kind of like one of those things where it's like I've had that like lifeline, and I'm very done with that. I want to like be proud to like make my own living and make my own earning and not have to take from anyone else anymore and
Right.
just kind of like be independent.
Right.
And so I guess part of the grind for me right now is paying for school, which might involve me basically selling everything I have and
Wow.
working
Commitment.
3 jobs and doing whatever I have to do just to go to school to pursue this career
Right.
that I want so badly. So
Right. And I see like the life coach in me and the mama bear in me is thinking like, yes, like I get that there's that sacrifice everyone needs to like make that go of themselves. But what I'm trying to do is talk to people about how that doesn't just become your lifestyle, because I know I talk to a lot of young people who tell me that their parents really weren't around that much for them, but because in order to stay here and live here, they had to work such long
mhm,
hours that they really weren't all that present.
yeah,
And so how do you get more for yourself outside of the business side, right? Like in my coaching practice, I use these symbols of our what I consider to be our each key areas of self.
mhm,
And I think when you're first starting out, it's totally understandable that your the green piece or your career piece is like center stage, right?
mhm,
Because you have to make a mark for yourself. You have to get something going from
yeah,
nothing, right? And what I think people around here, and I imagine in the LA fashion world as well, is like I think some people forget that there's any other piece of themselves because they're so committed to that.
mhm,
And so I like to remind young people in particular, because I feel like your generation, I have so much hope for you guys. Like a
mhm,
lot of people, I know you have some feelings about the whole millennial stigma. Why don't
yeah.
you share some of those?
Yeah, I just think that there's like this like blanket kind of term, not term, I guess, but just like this attitude towards millennials. That's like we've been well, people say we've been pampered so much, and we're like the everyone gets a trophy generation,
Right.
which I never personally
You're
experienced.
wearing my damn trophy today,
Yes,
right?
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's kind of like I've seen that in other places, and
Hmm.
other people have been raised in that. I
Right.
wasn't raised like that. I
Right.
was always raised of like, you got to compete. And if you want to be up in, first, second, or third, you got to compete to be there. And
Right.
you have to work like every second to try to get to where you want to be. Like I remember a conversation I had with my dad when I was 8 years old was I told him I wanted to be a professional hockey player. And he said, great, I'm going to give you this book, and it's about how it takes 10,000 hours to master something. And I read it, and I was like, I have to.
Maybe 1,000. Not
Yeah,
in for 10.
yeah. And he's like, I was like, I need to spend 10,000 hours on hockey to try to become a professional hockey
Did
player.
you try to do it?
Yeah, every night after school,
Oh, wow.
from I would come home, my mom would make me a snack, I'd do my homework, I'd go out in the front yard or the driveway
Yeah.
and skate and shoot pucks and all that.
Right.
Had dinner, I'd go back out till it was getting dark. My mom told me to come in for bed, and I did it every single day until I did that probably from when I was 8 to 15.
Right. And so you're like, don't paint me with that brush. Like I'm ready to work for stuff.
Yeah, and so I just feel like there's this like sense of like, oh, millennials just like they get out of college and they think that they should like they deserve to be like the CEO of the company or something like
Right.
that. For me, I look at it as like, no, I rather start at the bottom, learn everything,
Right.
work my way up so that no one can tell me I don't understand something
Right.
about a business or how it should be run or what I should do, and then be the CEO or the creative director or start my own company.
Yeah.
Work your way from the bottom to the top. And whether it's like the scale of like Facebook or like me, like just starting my own company, you can't escape having to learn every
Right.
little step.
Right.
So,
There's no fast pass for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I know that, there's always going to be millennials on both ends.
Absolutely. And honestly, some of the critiques that I hear, criticism I hear, I like if for someone who's trying to have a life and not just a job, that part I'm like, please, millennials, fix it, because my
Yeah.
generation has not. I watch people that are beaten down by this pressure to be on our phones all the time, and in my generation, it's not even all social, not even
Yeah.
a part social media. It's like that ding happens, it's like, oh, there's work again. Like, and yeah, it may take you just a minute to answer that work email, but now it's reactivated in your mind, the work world again. So it's
Mhm.
like, when do you ever get to connect with your people, your family? When do you ever get to like have some fun? Because it gets always interrupted by something. So that's a big. I hope your generation fixes what we've messed up, right?
And I completely agree with that completely. And I think one of the biggest problems that my age group deals with is I want to work so hard so that I can get to where I want to be and have the money I want to have. But at the same time, I need to project to people on social media that I'm living this like
Oh,
crazy picture perfect
right,
life that I want everyone to think I'm living.
right.
So it's like, it's so stressful. And I know many people like this, especially friends of mine in LA who are living this double life of like, I'm working at a retail store and then going to school and then working another job. And I had like a 20-minute break. So I walked down to this place and had someone take a picture of me so I could
Right,
act like I was just like kind of
right,
like just fucking off for the day. And it's
right,
like, but it's just not the truth.
right. And I think that we would all do well to like, if you haven't thought of it lately, like take this as your reminder that that's what people do. Like I look at, well, that's a pretty picture, but I don't necessarily, excuse me, believe it.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe it. I know that's their best moment of the day of the week. I don't think that's their only moment. I mean, it is so easy. I agree that it's easy to forget that as you're thumbing through the feed, but I think we'd all do well to remember that this is their highlight reel. I'm not going to, and usually someone is posting when something great happened
Hmm.
and someone is watching when they're bored. So
Yeah.
when you're feeling bored and uninspired, you're scrolling through, and so then it hits you a little harder, like, 'cause you're not doing that right now. But maybe in 3 hours you'll be the one posting something that someone else is like, wow, I wish I was doing that.
Yeah. I know. I mean, like, there's so many people who have been caught on who are like quote unquote social media famous who have been like, they're taking a picture with a rented car or other
Right.
people's car, or they stole someone's photo and they try to make it look like them, or like there's just all these different instances of like, it's so clear that the pressure out there,
Is a lie.
it has no bounds. It doesn't,
Right.
your follower count doesn't change anything. The people who have 15 million followers and some high school kid who has 15 followers,
Right.
the pressure's there to perform and like put out this vibe that it's like, I live this amazing,
Right.
crazy, great life. And it's just, it's
Yeah.
not honest and it's not authentic. And I feel like to a point, we are kind of turning a bend where it's like authenticity and not caring so much on social media is almost cool.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
Because one of my big things, as I've talked to you about before, is we're slipping into the red zone of the key areas of self is your relationship self. And it's like, if our goal in life is to have people that will be there for us
Hmm.
in like for all of life's wins and losses and everything in between, like, to connect with those people, to get to that level of intimacy where you can count on them, you have to show them who you really are.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're attracting people to a lie. And so if people are attracted to a lie, based on what they're promoting on Instagram or wherever else. It's like, how do they trust you if they know that's not true?
Yeah.
Like, if I know you and you start posting pictures like that, I'm gonna be like, come on, like you're misrepresenting your reality.
Yeah.
So do I trust you? And how am I going to count on you as a person if the trust is already not there? So I super love that you're telling me there's a new love of authenticity out there
Yeah.
starting, because I think that's the only way we get people to be there for us, is to show them who we really are.
I saw an ad the other day that actually reminded me of like one of our conversations about this. Was it was for one of these like editing apps, like
Ah,
for yeah,
I hate them.
for social media. But
Uh,
the ad that they had was like a heavier set dude, and they're tapering his stomach down, and there's a thing where you drag this thing up and it instantly gives you abs. And I thought to myself, I'm like, how can you convince anyone of that? Like, if you,
It's
like,
so crazy.
if you look like moderately overweight, let's say,
Right.
how are you going to convince people that like overnight you have
Yeah.
a six pack? But like, there's people out there that are like, oh, I look so good in this photo, even though I know it's all bullshit. I'm still going to post it.
Well, so the only way you would be tempted to use that is if you just planned on staying in your home the rest of your life so that no one would actually see you as the lie that you are.
Yeah.
So how is that combating this loneliness epidemic?
Or constantly running on the treadmill while you're posting that, so that maybe you'll look
someday,
like that when you get off.
You would hope, but I have a feeling that's not happening.
No.
So I think that's one of the things is that people talk about Silicon Valley being a really lonely place. And you're thinking there are a million people alone in San Jose. How can we possibly be lonely?
Yeah.
And I think it's because of things like this that no one's really talking about, is that our social life is our social media, and which isn't all that social. Like click, like, that's it. Like, so we need to get out there and connect with people. And the only way to connect with people is to show them who you really are, so they know if it's a match or not. And so that's just one. You get a topic that is really upsetting to me. But so how are you going to be able to maintain your connections with people when you're starting a business? How do you anticipate that?
I think the thing that I've loved with my businesses and the different kind of like I call it like freelance stuff that I've done on kind of the fly is I love the creative process of people. So I love that, like, being able to sit down and talk with someone not as like a business colleague or another business person, but more of just like, tell me about who you are. Tell me about what you're passionate about, and then let's vibe off of that. And I know that sounds like a business answer, but I do like to form connections in that arena.
Right.
And I think the other thing is just kind of valuing, my mom always used to say to us growing up, this would rarely happen, but every once in a while we would say to her, I need a mental health day. Right. To skip from school and be at home and take a second and like be with our family and just sit and relax and just kind of take a step back.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it'll be taking my quote unquote mental health days when I need it, which might be spending time with my girlfriend or going out with friends or going on a drive somewhere, whatever it may be. So
I love it. I love that plan. So on this podcast, I love to talk with people about the challenges, right? And in your case, you're in major startup mode, just like my old Steve Jobs at my high school was. You're in startup mode, right? So we know you're going to be working your tail off to make this brand like what you envision it to be, right? And so I like to talk with everybody about how it all can feel sustainable and enjoyable in the process, right? I would hate for you to get to the pinnacle of your career success, but lose some other key things along the way that like really are just as important. And I think that's why I like to focus on the 4 key areas of self and not just the almighty green one, which is our career or intellectual self. The part that is like lets us afford our rent, our mortgage. It helps us, feel that success that we're all yearning for, right? Want to make your mark, but not at the expense of everything else. So let's talk a little bit about your physical self and how do you commit 100% to the work and still how do you retain good health?
Yeah, and I think that I think this is the story of like the hardest part of a lot of people in my age, which is either you're working a super consistent scheduled full-time job and you know exactly what time you have, and so you can allocate workout time. The thing that I think a lot of people don't track on, and it's one of the huge stresses that I've dealt with in terms of like just Silicon Valley starting a business in general, is it's like I don't have time to work out, and I don't know when I'll have time to work out because all I'm doing is working on the fly.
Right.
Because like one of the things that you talk about is even when you get home and you're out of the office, you're still on call for if someone needs to talk to you about something or someone wants to schedule a last second meeting, you have to be there for that. And so that's something that I've struggled with over the past couple of years, which has kind of been like allocating that time for working out and making sure I'm eating right, or cooking, just even down to like cooking meals and not going out to eat, which I feel like is a huge thing in Silicon Valley. Is
100%.
like, oh, let's just go out. Oh, there's a great this place. There's a great that place. But it's like no one's like at home cooking because you're just like constantly working.
I 100% see that in my coaching practice. I have people put as a goal for their physical self to prepare 2 meals a week. And I think, dang, like 2? Like that sounds really low to me. Like, because we all know that the food that we eat out, it's way more delicious than anything I prepare, but there's a reason for it, right? Like the sodium, the fat, and the fries, like all of that is great, but like you can get yourself into more trouble that way. So I hear what you're saying about like you don't know, your schedule is up in the air. And so you're trickier to work with than the person that has like the classic like 8 to 6. I wouldn't dare say 9 to 5 anymore because I don't think anybody's left in that arena. But I would say that you probably have at least a lens on what tomorrow looks like. So how can you? I think that running our calendar becomes such a priority because I don't think you're ever going to get balance unless you do that, because life, like work, just takes over everything else. So if you know, like tomorrow, that I feel like you can control the beginning of your day a lot more than the end. So I'd be the person like waking up at 6 to at least get a walk in, or at your age, maybe a run, but I don't know, walk the dog, something to get that body moving and to make sleep a priority. Like I would say like look at an app and do that before bedtime to kind of calm your mind. Because I think all of those things are so easily backburnered. And the thing about your age is you actually can pull it off for now. But what happens is if you keep doing that, then eventually you're my age and you can't pull it off anymore. Like the back goes out and you have a surgery, or God forbid you have a heart attack or something much more serious. So I'm always pushing my clients, young and old, like I know the demands of your work. Well, I don't know them, but I know there are many. And I still advocate that this is not optional. And so I want young people to, yes, you need to sleep. Yes, you need to eat right. Yes, you need to move your body in whatever way you will do consistently. And I think that's super important. And so I hope that you can find a way to work all of that in as you like go for it in your business. The other part that I like to talk about is your relationship self. And I've met your girlfriend, so I know that you have love in your life, and I think that's so important too. I also look at people in my generation that have big demanding jobs, and what happens is, of course, just like your health, it's like, have you seen those videos where they show erosion in like a fast forward kind of video? Like you don't see the couple of rocks fall down the hill on today, but when you look at the sped up video, all of a sudden you say, holy crap, that whole hill went away. That's kind of what happens to our relationships and our health if they aren't like maintained on a regular basis. So I'm here to encourage you that to make time for your girlfriend, time for your friends. It sounds like you have an easy job connecting with people, even in the business sense. So I don't think I'm that worried about that for you. I see you making that a priority. You're a very social person. But I ask people to put that on their calendar too, like meet Steve for coffee. Because if you don't put the social stuff on there, again, just like the workouts and the sleep, it becomes I don't really need to do that.
Yeah.
How much sleep are you getting these days?
I mean, a solid like 8 hours at least. And whether I'm like going to bed later because I'm working late, and then I get like, if I go to bed at 1, I get up at 9. Like I try to limit it to 8 hours, because I think more for me, for like my body, anything more than like 8 hours, and I just like, I'm like, well, I guess I'm home all day because I just don't feel like doing anything.
No, totally. They say getting too much is, I wouldn't say as bad as not getting enough, but it's not great, and not great either. And how about like making time for friends? Are you able to do that? Because that's tricky too when you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend that you want to spend time with. So you have all the work, and then you have a romantic relationship. And it's like, but what about other friends? Are you able to make time for that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of have that interesting, like, I shedded my high school friends and I had my college friends. And
Right.
now that I'm graduated, we're all in different places, but we all talk like all the time and stuff. So I always make it a point to be like,
Staying in
call
touch.
them, FaceTime them. Hey, we should all plan to visit each other type of thing. Just keeping that relationship alive. And then
That's awesome.
obviously I'm going down to LA. So I have friends down
Right.
there that I'm excited to be closer to them so that we can hang out and see each other a lot
Yeah.
more often.
I think that's super important because a lot of times when people leave college, they all their friends kind of sprinkle in the wind, and then
Mhm.
it's like you find yourself lonely because how do you make new friends when you're working all these hours as well? So it's I like to tell people that I know it's hard, but
Mhm.
it has to be a priority because I think when we get lonely, we're our most dangerous selves. I think people tend to sleep too much, eat too much, online shop too much, all these behaviors that aren't really good for us when
Mhm.
we feel loneliness. We're trying to fill that void when really what we need to be doing is putting ourselves out there for a connection with humans. And I know you're really good at that. The last key area of self that I refer to is your joy self. And that's the one that the workaholic people really just look at me like, what, are you kidding me? Like, joy? Who has time for freaking joy? Right? They're like, I gotta work out, and I gotta take care of my family.
Mhm.
Now you're telling me I'm supposed to have some fun. And I'm thinking, yeah, you have to have some fun because otherwise you're kind of a jerk. Like, people who all work and no play are not nice people to be around because they're tapped out. They're resentful, they're sad, they're depressed because it all just feels like the grind, right? So I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I love to like ask people, what are your 5 go-to moves that are going to lift your spirits so that you're so aware of them that if you do find yourself with a cherished free moment, like, what are you going to do? I think so many people, instead of Netflix and chill, I think they Netflix and numb. They
Mhm.
just kind of like, I just watch a whole
Yeah.
season of something instead of going out and doing something that's actually going to feel satisfying afterwards.
Mhm.
Like, you watch 7 hours of TV programming, like, wow, I mean, it's, you numbed out, but did you have really any enjoyment from
Yeah.
that? So, what are your go-to moves? What like lights you up?
Yeah. I think number one would be spending time with my girlfriend just because that it like could be like, oh, let's go travel somewhere. Let's go like try a new food place.
Have
Let's
an
like,
adventure.
yeah, like it's one of those things where it's just kind of like a new thing every time. So
Love that.
that definitely spending time with like my brother, my family.
Mhm.
That I think that's like super important. I
Absolutely.
hold family and family relationships extremely high in my life. You never lose family, so I find that to be like a really important thing. So
Awesome.
that playing hockey is still a very therapeutic thing for me. I don't do it as much as I'd like to, but I'm
Right.
working on that. But that drawing, just because I'm constantly sketching, different ideas for like stuff I might want to sew and make at
Awesome.
Fitum or in my brand, or um, and I guess that ties into like graphic design. I love graphic design and making logos and drawings and stuff like that. Just everything comes out a lot cleaner on a
Yeah.
computer, so it's like very satisfying.
Cool.
And then my fifth thing, as much as it sounds like kind of an out because it's one of the other things, but working out is like really a good therapeutic thing for me. I feel a lot happier and a lot
Yeah.
better after I have worked out, especially running.
Right.
So
Get
I'd
those
say,
endorphins going.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like that is probably like my fifth.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that, like, I always talk to my clients about like when you can get a twofer in this busy full life of ours, like by all means get the twofer. And so I've noticed in several of the things you said, like, I like to spend time with my girlfriend and my family, and it's like, there you go, you're serving your relationships and you're having fun at the same
Hmm.
time. It's like, if you can knock two out together, that's ideal. And then when you also said that you get joy from hockey and exercise, you're getting you're getting exercise and you're having joy. That's awesome. And then the designing, it's like, how perfect for you that your career that you're pursuing
Hmm.
also has that creativity aspect that feeds your spirit. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite people that I quote all the time is Dr. Brene Brown, and she says that in her interviews of people that she classified as wholehearted, which I believe is just another way of saying happy.
Hmm.
And for some reason, people don't seem to think the word happy is a worthy aspiration, which to
Yeah.
me is like, hello, isn't that the whole point?
Yeah.
Like, love your life. You
Yeah.
get one of these. Like,
Yeah.
please tell me you're happy, because if not, you're going to break my heart.
Yeah.
But she says that 100% of the people that she interviewed that are wholehearted or happy have um, a creativity practice.
Hmm.
But, hmm. Now, for some people, that's going to be drawing. For
Hmm.
some people, it's going to be music, writing,
Hmm.
any of those things like that. Just kind of crafting, anything that
Yeah.
makes you feel like, I got to make this one thing. So it sounds like you're doing a fine job of all of that. So that's the balance part of it. The other thing I like to encourage my clients to think about is having boundaries, because I operate on that quote that you can't live a positive life surrounded by negative people.
Hmm.
And I also add on that I don't think you can live a positive life surrounded by negative input.
Yeah.
And so, as it applies to people, it sounds like you might have weeded out some of the people that weren't exactly inspiring to you when you left
Yeah.
high school.
Yes.
So, are you mindful of who you surround yourself
Yeah, I actually had a really interesting conversation with my girlfriend the other day, which she has like basically all of her friends from high school, and I don't. And she's more, I'll say, forgiving of people's like toxic behavior.
with? Hmm.
And because of the things I've gone through, I'm not tolerant of it at all. I'm
Right.
very particular about who I allow in I call it like my inner circle.
Right.
So in my inner circle, I'm extremely, extremely picky about who I surround myself with, because
Right.
my dad has always said to me, you become like the five people that you surround yourself with
Yeah.
the most. And I've really taken that to heart. And I'm like, well, do I want to be hanging out with like, the stoner kid who's playing
Right.
video games all day and
Right.
has no ambitions? Or
Right.
do I want to be friends with people who are like, I want to start my own private practice for therapy. I want to start my own podcast. I
Right.
want to direct movies. I want to be around those people.
It's exciting,
It's
right?
yeah, and it's like motivating, and this loops right back to the whole Silicon Valley thing, which is like it's incredible to see people who you grew up with pursuing their dreams, doing the things they want to do, and grinding for what they want. And it's only more motivating for me, even though I'm in a different field than them.
Right.
It's like, wow, that's so cool. Like you've made progress in trying to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Now I want to do that.
Right. It's like a contact high
Yeah.
of energy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So people that are, yeah, they have a light in their eye. Like there's something that they hunger for that's like growth oriented, and it's like, wow, that's about as attractive as it gets. Like to like collaborate, share ideas with people
Yeah.
that are really trying to do something. I agree. I mean, I do believe that we have to be a little forgiving of people. Like, not strike one, you're out, but maybe after strike five,
Yeah.
But just to really edit your circle, because it does. I believe that really does define what your idea of what everyone or normal is. The people you surround yourself with. So if they're doing big things, it's like, what's my big thing? I need
Yeah.
a big thing.
Yeah.
But if they're like, not doing much, you're like, yeah, well, that's what everybody does. Like,
Yeah.
let's just chill and watch another series of something on Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one part of the boundaries that I like to talk about. The other part is the input. Now, this part I find a little controversial with people, and so feel free to disagree with me passionately if you need to. But I'm one of those people that I think I'm a pretty like an empath, and so heavy, scary things like probably affect me more than they do the average person. And so I'm very mindful of what I let in, not just who, but what, because I find that between like headline news and work pressures and the woes of people I love, like I've got a lot in a day that's like making me a little bit nervous
Yeah.
or stressed. And so I really want to make sure that when I do get some hours, and I like to leave that time between dinner and bedtime like open for something that's going to make me like feel entertained, but it with light.
Yeah.
I just can't go into the shoot 'em up like 75 rounds of whatever going into somebody's chest and
Yeah.
me going, wow, like, okay, now I'm even more scared than I was
Yeah.
earlier today. So is that a priority for you? Like, are you mindful of the input that you filter in and out?
I guess I kind of have like an interesting answer for you, which is it'll sound like I like controversy, but I don't. It's just that for me, as I call myself a very artistic and creative person, those things that are happening out in the world that are very negative inspires me to say something about it. So, in my clothing brand, I did an entire piece about. I did a mental health awareness month where I did a line of clothing that addressed like very provocatively what was going on with kind of the mental health field
Hmm.
and the lack of it being addressed in the media with shootings and things of that nature. For me, I almost like to live in that like dark, uncomfortable corner because out of that, it springs a lot of creativity out of me because I'm like, wow, this is horrible or this is really shitty or I'm so tired of hearing about this makes me go, well, why don't I comment on it? Or why don't I try to change the conversation about that? Why don't I try to like put a more positive light on this so that people can go, this is really terrible what's happening, but let's think about this and go in a positive direction. So that's always the way I'm trying to go. So
Oh, that's cool.
I hate what's going on a lot of the times in like the media and out in the world and some of the things that you see, but at the same time I love that I hate it because out of that creates like
Gets you riled up.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly. It gets me like excited to be like there's a purpose to what I'm doing or there's a purpose to what the next thing I'm designing is. So
That's really cool because I'm thinking I'm trying to filter out more negative, but you're like using it to fuel you to make positive. Like,
yeah,
and I'm more thinking about it on how I consume, and you're thinking about what you produce. I think that's really awesome. That's
I
really
yeah, I feel like a lot of me and a lot of other millennials, I feel like have this attitude that's like, um, when someone tells you you can't do something, you almost want to do it more.
hmm that's
I
awesome.
feel like it's that kind of mentality of kind of like I'd rather not have someone tell me, "Oh, you're so great at this, and you should really go do this," or rather have someone tell me like, "Oh, like you could never do this. You're never going to
Like,
succeed at
oh,
it." And I'm
watch
like,
me go.
"All
Yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah,
like let's go. Like
yeah,
gloves on. Like let's
yeah.
see what happens." Like so, I think that
That's the spirit. That's the
yeah,
spirit of an entrepreneur right there. So
yeah,
that's awesome. And the third thing I love to talk with clients about is the idea of bravery. And it's a word I've always been intimidated to use to apply to myself because if anyone who knows me, I'm the biggest chicken, physical chicken that you'll meet. But what I mean by being brave is it goes back to that authenticity part we talked about.
mhm,
So maybe we've covered that enough already, but I think that we have to be brave in two ways. One is in how we show up to people, because I think so much of the way to love your life is to have people. Like that
mhm.
is such a key component to all of it, is to have people that are there for you. Because I think this Silicon Valley lifestyle is just leaving us all lonely. As
Yeah,
crazy as it seems with all the connection we have in social media and whatnot,
yeah.
we're lonely.
I was gonna say earlier, I find it very interesting that we are in the epicenter of social networking and social media in an area that we've tried to make the connection with people even easier
Right.
and electronic. And
Yeah.
yet I feel like the in-person interactions here, to your point, is so lacking.
Yeah.
So many people feel alone because it's only through a screen and we're drifting further away from that like
Yeah. And even so many of the companies that my clients work for are so free with telecommuting, which is
yeah,
great and convenient. But then you don't really have the connection at work either. So you
yeah,
are literally in your house all day long. And a lot of people, I've had clients just break down to me is that, if you're talking about the five people um, that define who you are, they're like, I don't have five people. I mean,
yeah,
it's freaking them out. And so to build those connections. So what I like to emphasize, as we've already really talked about, is that the only way to find your people is to let them really see you. And if
Hmm.
you're going to edit that in all the ways we've already discussed, then you are never going to find those people
Yeah.
because you're attracting them to a lie, and that's not going to get you anywhere where you want to be. And the second way I think we need to take we need to show bravery is in taking risks, which obviously you're very comfortable in. But I'd like to remind people that what we're doing right here today, what we do every day, is super duper comfortable.
Hmm.
And we know how to do it. So it's like, oh, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to interact with these people. I know how to do this work. I know how to do this workout. It all
Yeah.
becomes very common to our, and comfortable. But that if we sit in it too long, suddenly it starts feeling boring.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, it starts feeling like we're just stagnant. And that's where we're at our worst place to be making a big, bold move because when you're stagnant, you do not feel inspired. You do not feel strong. You do not feel um, like you're going to have a great job interview or
Yeah.
a great first date or a great anything that you're looking for. So
Yeah.
it's like we have to force ourselves to nudge forward, even though it's scary. We have to be comfortable taking risks because
Yeah.
that's where we feel alive. All of our senses are on guard, like, oh, I'm doing something new here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm putting myself out there. And sure enough, like, I don't know how, and I've done plenty of entrepreneurial things that have had me land on my face. I am very comfortable with rejection.
Yeah.
I have met it many times. And through that, I've grown so many ways. I would definitely not be doing a podcast if I weren't afraid to take those risks.
Yeah.
So, when's the last risk you took?
I think it's a risk I'm currently taking, I'll say, is that I'm diving into a fashion design program with basically no experience on a sewing machine.
I love that.
And
That's
so
a risk. Yeah.
it's like, it's kind of hard for me to, I mean, when I was talking to the admissions officer at FITM, because you have to do a phone interview, um, she's like, "So how much experience do you have on a sewing machine?" And I don't know why I said so confidently, but I said none. And
Good.
she's like, "Oh, like, okay, well, do you plan on working on that?" And I was like, "Yep."
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like,
Oh boy.
it was kind of like I have nothing to lose. My work's
Yeah.
going to speak for itself. I'm either
Right.
going to get in or not.
And
But
they've seen your designs and they've heard
yeah,
about them.
and so it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, well, like I'm just gonna jump and hope I
Yeah.
land on my feet type of
Right.
thing, and luckily I did. But like it was, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty big risk for me to go. Yeah, I think I can go down there compete with people who might have been sewing since they were 6 years old, and they've
Right.
been doing it until now. And now I'm gonna jump in and compete with those people and
And
see
they
how
may
I do.
not, right? And they may not have the business experience and the working with vendors and all that stuff that
That's
you've done
exactly
too.
how I
Yeah.
see it. Is okay. You might be better on a sewing machine, but
Yeah.
I know.
And you may
Yeah.
have a vision they don't have too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. And so there's no way on earth that you're feeling like you're rotting right now. Am I right? Like
Yeah.
you're like, oh heck no, I'm very alive. All
Yeah.
senses on guard.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you talking with me. Is there anything you want people to know before we wrap this up?
I mean, I really appreciate you having me on. It's awesome to talk. I mean, obviously, you always give like the best and greatest advice. I know that like on camera, like people are like seeing this like great conversation, but this is usually the norm with me and
Yeah.
Shana, like great conversations.
Can
But
talk for days.
yeah, exactly. I think one of the things that I would just like, because I think the majority of the people watching this are in Silicon Valley and young or old or whatever it is. But I think the thing that I would want people to take away from this conversation is just kind of the fact that they're not alone in their feelings. Everyone's trying to be that next big thing or start that next company or whatever it is that your goal is. I think everyone's suffering the same, kind of day in and day out grind and negligence to some of the other key areas of self
Yeah.
that I think people really need to look into. I definitely did for a long time. I neglected these things and I saw the effects of that. So I hope that people take this seriously because it is something that you need life balance. If you don't, then you're just going to break. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you validating all of that,
Yeah.
and definitely hope everybody stays tuned to see what Zach Bull will do next. Hopefully, he'll be wearing his clothes in no time here.
Yeah, we'll see.
Once he gets that sewing machine figured out.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that risk taking. That's exciting.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited, and hopefully when I'm done with Fit'em, I can come back on the show and we can
Absolutely,
talk
and go, yeah, look at me now.
about it. Yeah.
So thanks so much for tuning in, and hope to see you next time.